I'm Tash, this is Ollie, and this is the Connectcast. And today we're going to be chatting a little bit about how the Connectcast came about, a little bit about where we first met, and getting to know each other, really, aren't we? So we're going to do a little bit of a roundup to start off our very first episode with you guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's go.
Let's go. So we met about 2 years ago on the Share Your Story tour.
Yeah, I think when we spoke about it, it must have been 2021.
Yeah.
2021.
Seems like a long time ago, but also, yes, like yesterday.
Yeah, it was a long time ago and like a lot's changed. But then when you think about the time, it just doesn't feel like it's been like 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
Three and a bit years.
Yeah.
'Cause it
Well,
was
we're
like,
almost in 25.
oh God, it's so depressing when you think about
We'll get into that.
time.
Oh, send us into that hole.
Time, yeah.
But yeah, so we met on the Share Your Story tour, which was essentially a celebration of the BBC's 100th birthday.
Yep.
And to celebrate that, the BBC took a presentation, basically, a glorified presentation, into different schools in and around the country.
Yep.
And the whole purpose was like there was two sides of it, and there was a more of a sort of in-depth story side where people and their stories, whether it be something more heartwarming, something quite tragic, was taken in and around schools. And then there was a bite-sized side of it, which was the careers side. And as a team, we contacted people in the local areas of the schools we were going to, who owned businesses, small businesses, big businesses, whichever businesses they were, to sort of help people with career ideas and decisions, really, wasn't it? And to help connect people to the creative industry.
Yeah.
That was essentially it.
That was what it was, yeah.
And you were on that.
Yeah, we were on it as like the BBC asked us to come on it and go into a school and talk about what is my business, which I run with Joe, which is Matchbox Productions. And then you were obviously there as a researcher.
Yep.
And you looked after us on the day.
Yep.
And then,
Did I do all right?
Yeah, you did. You did. We felt looked after. So yeah, we went into two schools. I did one, and we went in and I talked about sort of my side of the business, which is like the videography side.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joe went into another school the next day and talked about his side, which is the audio side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good because obviously at the time I sort of was like, oh, how come the BBC are asking us to go on and talk about our career? Like at the time I feel like I'm really early on in our career now,
Mm-hmm.
but you're talking 3 years less experience back then, so I still felt a bit like, well, I did feel like, oh, why are we being asked to go and talk to our careers? Obviously it was to students and high school students, so to them, anyone working in the industry is sort of the career, but we felt really like privileged to be asked because we didn't feel like we had really much to tell, really.
Yeah, which is crazy. Hearing you say that is crazy, because when you were on stage and speaking to you then, I thought you guys had such a well-rounded business already, and that was 3 years ago. So obviously you know your progress and you sort of know how far you've come. But even at that moment in time, what you guys had was brilliant. I mean, and for, not to age discriminate, but for your age as well, like what you guys had was great and is great. It's grown.
Yeah, we still had a good thing back then. Like we were in a smaller studio, but we'd only been going like, I guess it would have been like 2 years, like 18 months. So it was like, oh, I guess it's sort of like imposter syndrome, being like, oh,
Yeah.
we're not good enough to be able to share our story. But I suppose it wasn't like share your story of people who have retired and have got 60 years of experience to share. It was still, just share where you're up to. And hopefully we were able to sort of, give a good story and show people where we're up to and stuff. And it was nice to be able to, the kids to be able to ask questions and ask about like this industry and stuff, which was pretty good. And the day was good, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's that thing as well, isn't it, of you only really need to be one step ahead of someone on a similar path, or yes, on the similar path, really, to be able to give that helping hand and give some advice to someone. And that's why we wanted to do this, really, I guess, wasn't it? So the Connectcast was sort of all about, would you agree, bringing people together, particularly young adults or people in school who are thinking about the different career options that are coming up. I think when you're in school as well, it's so focused on sort of the grades you're going to get and that stepping stone into sort of the bigger, wider world. But I don't know how it was for you, but for me especially, and me leaning into more of the creative side, unless your family or close friends know of somebody who works in the industry, it can be really hard to sort of make those initial links and chat to somebody who's in that line of work that you see yourself going in. So the ConnectCast, you know, as we've chatted a bit about, is sort of about bringing together people from all different sorts of careers and jobs and industries, not just the creative industry. And hopefully younger people will see that at home and think, oh, that's a bit about that industry, I really like the sound of that. Or, you know, or maybe different jobs will arise on this podcast as well that younger people didn't even think about.
Yeah, I think obviously we've spoken a little bit back and forth, and we were like, oh, you know, who is it for? Like, who's going to want to listen? Who's going to want to come on? And at first I think we were quite like, oh, like the creative industry, like people in the creative space. But really, like, there's countless industries that will be able to take something off everyone that speaks, if that makes sense. So like someone from a videography business might still learn something from someone from like your side of the business, or maybe someone in sport. There's always going to be like those connections that don't necessarily just need to be about the creative industry. So I think what we decided more is this podcast is just for anyone who, I guess, careers that, I don't want to say not traditional, but just in any space, or people that maybe like work for themselves or want to turn a hobby into a career, or people that just want to just learn about other people's careers, really. I mean, hopefully on this podcast we'll have some nice guests that just want to talk about, I guess, their lives, their stories, and doesn't matter where they're up to in their career, but if they've got something exciting to say, then we want to hear it, really.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's not, you know, the careers is a big part of it, but it's not just that. If people have got interesting, inspiring stories that they want to come on and tell, then yeah, we want to hear it, basically. And that was what Share Your Story was sort of all about, from a careers point of view and from sort of a life point of view.
I guess you could say really that the Share Your Story was like probably a big inspiration for this podcast, because one, it's how we met, and it's sort of like our common ground that we spoke about that.
Yeah.
And two, like, it is a good concept that I guess we'd like to explore more, like hearing from different people, like anyone who's willing to listen and learn and take something away from it, then yeah.
If someone takes away even a little carrot of knowledge from someone we have on, or from either one of us, hopefully, maybe, then yeah, our job here is done. So should we get to know each other a little bit more then, and help other people get to know us a bit more, maybe?
Yeah, I guess get to know your hosts.
Get to know your hosts, that's it. So Ollie, tell me how it all started. Take me right back to school, college, sixth form, uni. Take me right back. Career wise, right back before Matchbox was even a thing. Like, where did it all start for you?
So I don't think I've always been one of those that's like in school where you've been like, oh, what do you want to do? I'll be like, I don't really know. Or I just say something stupid like, I'd never, you know, like sometimes you meet people like through school or high school and you're like, oh, I want to do this. Like, obviously we're a bit older now, and I feel like those people did go and do those things they wanted to do. Like the people in school who were like, oh, I want to be a dentist, like they're dentists now. But I was always sort of like, I don't really know. So my ethos in high school and college and university was just doing what I enjoyed. That was literally like it. Like, if I enjoyed it, I'd do well at it, and if I was doing well at it, I'd enjoy it. So that was the sort of path I went down. So something I always really liked was two parallels that have run through everything was music and media, and then sport as well. So they were like the three things that I just enjoyed, so I did them. So in high school, I took media, took PE, took music. And then in college, I did music and media. So a lot of photography, a lot of videography, like editing. And then I carried on with music as well through college. And then when I got to university, I felt like media was just stepping up a little bit to more of, I guess I was thinking a little bit more career-based, and I felt like I had more options in media. So I did media production at university, which was in Derby.
Oh, nice.
Lovely Derby. So yeah, it was just an opportunity to do what I enjoyed, really. And then I carried on sport and I carried on music, just not in a educational sense, really. And all of those have just come from what I've enjoyed. So like, I was always taking photos on holiday as a kid, like always had a camera, always playing football, always doing music, learning drums and learning guitar. And then that's just where it went, really. I never thought, oh, I'm going to start my own business. But then after university, it was just sort of like, I didn't really want to get into a traditional job straight away. And we started doing stuff like for people. It was for bands. Like me and Joe were recording live sessions with our band that we were in. And it was sort of like, oh, maybe people would want to do this for them. So we'd go to a band and Joe would record the audio and I'd record them a video, and then it just spiraled from there really. And every time we did something, oh, what about this? Like, how can we help this band and how can we help this band? So again, the music parallel was pretty present throughout really.
Yeah. And then Matchbox obviously came from that, yourself and Joe's business. So would you say Matchbox was sort of like the whole package for people, musicians especially, to begin with, where you sort of did the videography, Joe did the audio side of things? Is that sort of how it came about?
Yeah, that was the sort of when the penny dropped of like a unique selling point. So normally a band looking to do like a single, for example, they would go to someone over there to record the single. They'd go to someone over there to take photos of them, and then they'd go to someone over there for a music video or whatever else they might need. The idea came about that between mine and Joe's skill set, we could offer everything in one go, in one place, in one building, and it grew from there, really.
So what year did you have your first studio?
So we were October 2020.
Wow.
So
okay.
it's just actually when that second lockdown hit. So
perfect timing.
great timing. But it gave us time, like...
I think a lot of people will actually relate to that timing and setting up a business as well.
I think it came about because we had so much time, and me and Joe spent all our days on PlayStation together on headset because we couldn't do anything. And we were just reeling off ideas and talking about what about this and what if we could do this for this band and whatever. So when lockdown lifted, we sort of ran with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the second lockdown came, and then...
More planning.
more planning, yeah. It was time where you couldn't go to your normal job. So you'll relate to this, and creative people relate to this. Like, you've got to be creating, you've got to be making. So we just wanted to keep making and keep creating, and that was the idea that came out really.
Brilliant.
And then it grew from there, and eventually we left our jobs, and it just became more of a forefront in our lives really.
And that's the thing as well. And I don't know whether this is maybe a topic for another podcast, but switching between a full-time job and being paid by someone else to becoming your own employer.
Yeah, that transition, yeah.
And that transition is a whole thing as well, isn't it? And I know we've chatted a little bit about that in the past and sort of making that leap. So when was that leap for you? When?
To be honest, for me, it's for Joe, it was like this is like I'm doing it now. For me, it's been more of a gradual thing. I was in like a quite lucky position with the job I worked in. They were very flexible. So over the last couple of years, I've just dropped a day and dropped a day and dropped a day and dropped a day, and it's sort of been like this.
Yeah.
Which has been quite lucky, and I'm very fortunate. I've not had the moment of right, I've got to take off the safety net and go for it. I've sort of been able to gradually do it, which has been nice. So the pressure hasn't been as high and the risk hasn't been as high. But I feel like as I started to drop days, the pressure went up, which meant I was doing more. And I feel like when you do take away that safety net, it does help, but it just feels scary.
So you're technically a videographer by trade.
Yeah.
In your second space now, second studio with Joe and Matchbox Productions.
Yeah.
When did you start picking up a camera? When I know you mentioned before about sort of videoing things on holiday, but back then we didn't have iPhones. So where did the interest come from? Where did it spark from? You knew you enjoyed it, but sort of where did that come about? How did that come about?
I do think that, like taking photos on holiday was like a big one. Like my dad was always one of those where like, I feel like a few years ago to take photos on holiday, you had to commit to taking a camera. So like my dad always wanted like, a new camera and then by the time the next holiday came around, like a different camera came out. So I would watch my dad take photos on holiday, and then as he got a new camera, maybe I would start using the old one a little bit. And then like after holidays, it was like, obviously this isn't really a thing anymore, but like making photo books of the old holidays. I don't really think that's as much of a thing anymore. But so my dad always had a camera for holiday. And my first like ever like camcorder, like I still have now, and we use it on like music videos in the studio and stuff, which is fun, like a full circle.
Yeah.
So yeah, like he always had a camera, and I would use it, and then we'd come home and make a photo book from the holidays again, which we still have. I think probably just spiral from there really, and then like like taking photos of like pets, like your pets as you grew up and that kind of thing. So I feel like we just always had like a camera around really.
Yeah, and that sort of sparked your interest, and then gradually you did more and more.
But like subconsciously, like just because I enjoyed taking photos, it wasn't like I better go and take photos. Like
but you knew you were creative in some form. You knew you lent more towards sort of those subjects and that sort of field. So it's interesting because you saying that, you know, certain people know specifically the job that they want to do, and if you do, then brilliant, like that's amazing. Obviously it just gives you a bit of a head start, I guess.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean to say people don't change what they do later down the line, but I was the exact same as what you're saying, sort of didn't know what I wanted to do.
But I was lucky as well, like I didn't really have like, my mum and dad weren't like, oh, you need to decide, or you need to do something traditional, or they were quite happy to just support whatever I was doing. Like
Yeah.
I was playing football, I was going to drum lessons, I was taking photos, like mum like got me on this like little photography course when I was, it was just sort of like I enjoyed it, so I did it.
Yeah.
And I know I've spoke to a few people and they say, oh yeah, I'm doing media, but you know, my dad's making me do engineering and maths at the same time, like, so I didn't really have that, which was good. I didn't really have that pressure of like, you need to know where you're going and what you're doing, and you have to be traditional, so quite lucky in that sense as well.
And you just dropped in there that you play the drums.
Yeah.
What other instruments do you play?
I play guitar as well. Like I did lessons when I was growing up and stuff, and then obviously with the studio, sort of like we have bands come in, and sometimes we have like solo artists come in. So it's nice to be able to just like, you know, like me and Joe play on the artist tracks and stuff every now and again. So it's good to be able to like session on the tracks and stuff. That's a pretty cool thing to still be able to, you know, keep up playing drums and stuff. So
yeah, and even though, like you say, you didn't do music at university, that has, as you quite rightly said before, it's sort of been a direct parallel to your business now.
Yeah, like music, sport, and like media, like photography and videography, they've just ran alongside each other. Like music was always big in my house as well. My dad played guitar. I was like 20 years in a band, so again, like my dad played guitar. They bought me a guitar. Like that's always been like a link as well, really.
Yeah, and sort of everything that you've been passionate about has
converged.
Converged into a career. And I think if you can do something that you are passionate about and that you do enjoy doing, and you hear people say this all the time, it A, doesn't always feel like work, and B, I think passion speaks for itself massively. If someone's passionate about something, when they're chatting, when they're talking, it like oozes out of them. You can't hide it. And I think in comparison to someone talking about something that they really don't care about, there's a massive difference. Would you agree? Like when you hear someone speak,
I think you can tell when someone doesn't really want to do something.
100%.
And I just feel like I've just not, and it's fine. Like some people will do a job and, you know, they might necessarily love every day, but it's just like sort of just part of life, having work. That's just not something that I necessarily wanted for me, really.
I think it's important to say as well that even though you're doing something that you were passionate about and you really enjoyed, like that doesn't mean that every element to it you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I love this. Because that's not, I don't feel like that's real.
No, and I mean, I could have gone down not working for myself, because obviously there's been a lot of stresses and hardships that come with starting the business, and as we've done more, they become more present as well. Like the difficulties grow with as you grow, really different things to tackle and stuff. So yeah, there's sides to it that are give and take of having the business that are great. I've got flexibility and stuff, but I've also got the pressure of everything that comes with just booking a photo shoot. Like, you know, there's a lot more to the job than if I was to be employed by someone else. So there are payoffs on either side.
Yeah, there's pros and cons, and I think it's one of them, isn't it? There's always going to be a really difficult part there. And how have you sort of dealt with that side of it, creating your own business? Because would you agree, like that's a thing in itself, the business side of it is something in itself? How have you talk me through that? It's
just so, I mean, I would love to go back to university and do like a degree in business, but everything we've sort of had to learn has just been on the go, and by making mistakes. Like we've done something, we got it wrong, and then learned from it. Obviously there's the admin of, you know, booking jobs and communicating with clients. We've got things wrong in that side, and you just hopefully work on them and improve. You know, the financial side of things, you get things wrong, and we've just had to learn from them. We've had like good support from people around us with like building the studio. Like I don't know how to build a studio. I've had friends that have chipped in and helped, and then like on the accountancy side, like my dad, I didn't know anything. He's chipped in, he's helped because he was an accountant before he retired. So we've been lucky that the things we've not known, we've had to call on people around you, which I think is good, and then other times just get things wrong and just learn from them, really. It's
that thing again though, isn't it, of drawing on people's knowledge, drawing on their stories, drawing on their experience, and that is sort of a great round off really for this podcast. That's again why we want to do this. There's always someone out there, someone said this to me recently, there's somebody out there 9 times out of 10 who has already done something similar, or if not the same thing as what you're doing. So the knowledge is there, it's just about you putting things into place in order to get that knowledge to help you do what you want to do, basically.
Yeah, it's just like this business is like me and Joe, but it has been like a huge team effort. Like getting our first studio up and running was a huge team effort, and so was this really. And we obviously grateful for the people that we had around us, and obviously all the people that we've worked with as well. Like people have got a trust in you to create something for them. We've had that, which has been great. And then here we are now in this studio.
It's an amazing space.
Nice.
It's an amazing space. You've got so many different rooms. It's so versatile as well, this space.
So the business has sort of become like, in the old studio, we could only do one thing at a time. Like if there was a session on, it would just be the session. But now we're lucky enough to have the space where like it's a bit more of like a creative hub. So like we could be running the podcast here, but someone could be editing upstairs, and we have like a rehearsal room that opens in the evening. So it's really been nice. And I think like Warrington, where we are now, has sort of needed something like that, and the feedback has been nice about this place, which is good. And yeah, we're really enjoying it. We're really enjoying that it's somewhere people can come and create. Like someone came in last week and it was like a youth thing, and they were filming videos for something, and then other times, people have used this space as like a dance practice room. I don't know. It's whatever people want to use the space for, really.
Yeah, it's a big space as well, which I think is great. Makes it more versatile for things like a dance practice,
exactly,
for example.
Because we didn't think we were going to go down that route, like, but it's nice to just be that creative space, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To have for people.
3 years ago, obviously, 4 years ago, share your story 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
So 3 years ago to now, obviously you're in this bigger space, which is brilliant, really versatile. Would you ever think that you would be here when you were sat there on Share Your Story?
I don't know really, because I feel like when you're doing anything, it's hard to sort of keep looking back, or we always set ourselves like little goals. So rather than being like, oh, in a year we're going to be here, it was all just like, next month let's try and do this, and then in 6 months let's try and do this. So
it's a good way to look at it, though, really. It's great to have big goals, obviously, and be ambitious, but taking those little steps as well.
Yeah, I feel
and
like
breaking it down makes it more achievable.
I feel like massive goals can be a little bit disheartening as well. Like if we said like in a year we want to be in the best studio in the Northwest, it might not happen, and then you feel like you've not achieved. But if you look, we felt like if we looked at the smaller steps, then, and we didn't even think about moving into a bigger space. We just sort of literally one day turned around and was like, we're getting under each other's feet here in the same space. And we went and looked at somewhere else, and it was here. And we were like, okay, can we do it? And the answer was, I don't know. I don't know. Like, it might not work. It might fail. But we've been here 18 months now, and it's great. So I feel just by having those smaller steps have allowed us not to get disheartened, or by ticking off small goals each month or each
week even.
Yeah. So I would have liked to have thought we'd have been in this space, but I suppose as well in this space I just, there's goals that I have now for this space to make it better and nicer. So
yeah,
I don't feel like you ever feel like you've like there. You know what I mean?
What's one piece of advice you would give to 3 years younger Ollie sat on Share Your Story?
Probably to be a little bit more confident in like myself, and probably just to be a bit more consistent. Like I'm quite like, I've got an idea, and that's sort of jump between a lot of things. So just being able to just be consistent with individual things and just lock in a little bit more on things that are working and whatever. You
just reminded me there of a quote that my dad told me, which was, if you chase too many rabbits, apparently his grandma told him this, so my great-grandma, if you chase too many rabbits, they'll all get away. If you chase one rabbit, you'll catch it every time.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of,
I
don't know, that resonated with that quote.
Just being able to like be consistent and work on one thing at a time, really.
Yeah. I think it's great, though. I think the creative mind sometimes can work like this as well. It's great to come up to have all these different ideas and different pathways, and I think especially in a creative industry. And the more I chat to people, actually, the older I get and the more I speak to people from different industries and backgrounds, the more I'm realising everybody's got multiple strings to the bow. It's not actually just that one specific thing. It's everybody's a bit multi-skilled, but I think especially and even more so when you're starting off in this industry, it's great to have a sort of selection of different things that you can run alongside each other and be multi-skilled in, because ultimately, for example, when it comes to taking that jump from full-time employment to working for yourself, the more things you can do, the more sort of strings to your bow, the easier I feel that potentially is.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Yeah, I feel like there's like a line, like, I guess one piece of advice I would give to myself actually is to niche down quicker.
Okay.
So it's great to be able to do loads of things, but for example, if like you looked at someone's page who was a live show photographer and someone's page who every photo was something different but still photography based, and you were looking for a live show photographer, you'd probably hire the live show photographer, if that makes sense. So I think it's great that we've been nice and broad, but as we've niched down into smaller niches, we've had more success within that niche, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for example, like one of the things we've trialed this year is we've added like a sports section, and we've completely taken it away from, we've separated sport and music. So we were working with like, we work with one of our biggest jobs is ultra runners. So working on ultra events, and it was intertwined with the music. So bands would come on our page and see a bit of the studio, but then they'd see like a bit of ultra running. And I felt like that became a bit confusing for the bands, but also like the ultra runners were coming to our page and seeing a music studio. Whereas now we've split the two and it feels like they've both got their own space to breathe.
Yeah.
So like the studio is just about the studio now. And then we have our separate side, which is just about the ultra running.
Yeah.
And it just, the two don't even necessarily need to know that each other exist.
Yeah.
It just means that that's got its own space and that's got its own space, which I think is better. So yeah, it is great to have loads of things that you can do. But I think it's also good to be able to know when to niche down and be really good at one thing.
Yeah, you don't want to be a jack of all trades, master of none, do you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's good to have. I think what we're trying to say is like it's good to have multiple skills, but then honing them in as well. You can have lots of different skills, but just being really specific about them. But for example, though, like you can be a triple threat. You can sing, dance, and act, for example. But within those, there's so much more. Like you're saying, you know, someone might say they want to be a videographer, but what do you want to do? Do you want to be live events? Do you want to be wedding?
Yeah.
Do you want to be sport events? I'm sure within those, there's even more. And it's sort of, it's getting that experience as well in those specific sort of
because I've learned
industries.
something from every job I've done. But I think it's been nice to be able to be like, right, what I've learned is now going solely into sport, for example. Rather than being like, oh yeah, this is my page and it's got a bit of weddings and a bit of sport and a bit of music, because it's quite confusing for someone who's looking for a wedding photographer. You know what I mean? Like to see sport, they want to hire a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's what I've learned. It's long-winded, but yeah.
No, it's great. It's great. And it sort of feels like coming full circle now as well. You've gained experience over the past 3 years in those different things.
Yeah,
as
of course.
well,
You can still apply it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just because I'm not using it in, just because I'm using something in music and not in sport doesn't mean I can't use it. Like, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Right. Enough about me. Enough about me.
I know, that's
I don't really
great.
like talking about myself.
Really?
No, I don't.
You're
You're gonna give me anxiety. I've overspoken. I'm gonna go to bed tonight thinking like, God, I said too much.
No, definitely not. No, it's been great to know more about my co-host and learn more about you.
Okay. That was a lot. Anyway, right, okay. So, same question to you.
Okay.
So we know a little bit about you. Obviously, you were the researcher on Share Your Story.
Yeah.
You did a really good job.
Yeah.
You made us feel comfortable. So you take me back now, because I feel like you're like a researcher, and you'll tell me about your role. That is quite niche. Like, it's not just a role in TV; it's a specific role in TV that you do. I know you do more than that one role. So yeah, you let me know about you.
Okay, so when I was at school doing my GCSEs, all that type of stuff, it was always more of the creative subjects again that interested me more. I was quite into English. I'm really bad at maths. Still really bad at maths. But yeah, really into like English, drama and theatre studies, music. That was my thing. Moving into sixth form, I was really lucky. Went to a really good school. And yeah, sort of was inspired by some of my teachers really, actually, as well. Psychology. I loved psychology. And I think this is another reason why I really want to do the podcast as well, because chatting to people, finding out how people work, I really enjoy that side of life, really, I guess. So yeah, I did psychology, English language, and drama and theatre studies. And then when I was going on to university, I remember chatting, and this conversation might have been a little bit biased on her part, but I don't think it was, because she was genuine and lovely. But I was chatting to my drama and theatre studies teacher about it, and I said, I don't know whether to do psychology or to go down more of the media route. And she was like, you can read in a book about psychology anywhere. You can still do that. And I'm sure if I had that chat with my psychology teacher, it would have been the other way around. But she was like, what do you love the most? What do you feel like you'll naturally excel in more? And for me, it was like an easy question. So I went on to do media and performance at the University of Salford. I remember when I was looking sort of at my different degree and course options, I remember not really knowing exactly what it was, because I knew I wanted to be in front of the camera. I also knew that I wanted to learn how things worked behind the camera. Sort of growing up, I didn't really have any experience or exposure to that. And I think that's sort of in line with what was going on at the time as well. I don't think it was as much of a thing then as well.
Yeah.
And gradually I think it's just increased over time. But yeah, I didn't really know anybody in TV production or in the media world at all. So I knew that I wanted to learn behind the scenes, and I knew that I wanted to carry on doing things in front of the camera as well. So I had an agent for a little while when I was younger in high school. And then I didn't have an agent. This was for acting. I didn't have an agent for a very long time, and sort of focused on my studies, focused on university, had, a couple of sort of life events through that period of time. But I was ultimately trying to find a degree that could do the mixture. And that was actually really hard to find.
Yeah, because degrees can be quite specific.
Yeah.
Because I was the same, because my degree was like media production, but it involved like radio, TV, I think it was like script writing and graphic design.
Oh, they sound really similar then.
That was the 4 things that you could do. So like you started off with doing all 4, and then as the years went on, you knocked one off.
Okay.
So you finished with 2 things, one on one half the one on the other.
Oh, right. Oh, class. Yeah, it sounds really similar to that, to be fair. So like when I was looking, it was either straight film, just film production. And that seemed, for me personally, was a bit too abstract, I think is the word, potentially.
Yeah. And a bit too intimidating that it was like,
it was just
one
film.
Thing,
yeah, and I would have got no performance side of it either.
Yeah.
And I felt like school and sixth form just scratched the surface for performing for me. I really enjoyed the shows that we did, but I wanted to do way more of it. And then there was the other side of the coin, which was just drama and theatre studies. And it felt like there was no equal balance. So at the time, my head of year was saying to me, you need at least 3 options. If not, I think a lot of people did 5, but you need options. And I was like, there is no point in me choosing 3 different options, because I found a course, and I didn't particularly feel like, not that I wasn't ready to move away, but the course just so happened that it was actually on my doorstep. I went to the University of Salford.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that far. And even though I'm from Manchester myself, I sort of grew up more Cheshire way for a good portion of my life. And so I felt like I was further enough out of the city centre that actually I didn't spend a lot of time in the city centre. So it did feel quite new to me, actually. So yeah, the University of Salford, media and production is what I did. And that was like the perfect balance. So I told my head of year at the time, I was like, I don't think I can apply for any others, because if I get them, I'm not going to go. So there's no point.
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at me a bit like, she's got a point, but it's not okay, but fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like many people did, got an unconditional, so I was really happy. It was the one thing that I went for, and I got that, so that was fine. And I really enjoyed the course. It was really unlucky because there's some great facilities at the University of Salford, like their Media City campus. And it was so unfortunate that COVID sort of hit right in the middle of my degree. So in that second year, it was just...
You were one of them.
Yeah, and that was really rubbish, actually, because there was all these great facilities, and quite like your course, we did radio, theatre, a little bit of film. Presenting was a module as well. TV acting was a module, so we had like studios that were set up that looked like a TV set, essentially. And I had some amazing lecturers there, some really great people who are sort of in the industry now as well, which I think was really important for me as well, being taught by people who don't just lecture, they are actually in the industry that you want to go into. I don't know if you know Erin Shanager, she's in the Bay. She was one of my, the Bay on ITV, she was one of our lecturers for TV acting. She was amazing, and more people like her that were just great. So yeah, I just wish COVID didn't hit in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But aside from that, yeah, I was really happy with the choice that I made with that.
Yeah.
So
you left uni with your degree and you enjoyed your course, which is good. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a bit of like a hiccup, but one, it sounds like before you went to university, like similar to me, you didn't really have anyone being like, oh, creative subjects aren't a real job. You're just able to go and do what you enjoyed, which is sort of similar to me.
yeah.
So
Yeah, there was definitely no pressure from that side. It was very much like, just do what you enjoy and go
Yeah,
with it.
exactly.
And I was very much encouraged to do that by
Yeah.
school as well, which was great.
And then talk to me about like your first role after university. Like what do you class as your job role now? If someone says, what do you do for work? Because you've got quite a few strings to your bow.
Yeah. So now I'm a researcher and a freelance performer. The freelance side of things is something that this year I've put a lot more effort into trying to get started, and I don't even feel like I've scratched the surface yet. I'm very, very early on in that process. So yeah, basically I'm a TV researcher, which is what I did on Share Your Story.
Yeah.
But when I first left university, I was and so most people who want to go into television become a runner, and I essentially was that. So I was a production assistant, but I worked more for, and this is what I was saying before about it's good knowing the industry you want to go into or a rough idea of what you want to do, but within that there is also loads. So when I first started out, it wasn't actually in television. I worked for a company that did sort of the external productions and external shoots for like clothing brands and for big label brands. So for example, like Pretty Little Thing, Adidas, Longsdale. I worked for a company that did sort of all their still photography and videography and marketing. And I did really enjoy that. But I found a lot with like fast fashion, for example. I found that everything was a bit sort of last minute, maybe a bit, which in fact suits some people fine. But I think I liked a little bit of a longer project, a little bit
more structure.
Yeah, a little bit more to sort of sink your teeth into. But that is sort of not to say that I didn't respect that industry at all, because definitely did. Like, yeah, with especially like working with fast fashion brands as well. Like the turnaround is so quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started off doing that, and that gave me a great sort of stepping stool. And then I thought, I really want to get into broadcast television. I was like, how am I going to do this? And I actually went through a bit of I don't know whether it was like an identity thing or what. I was like, I don't even know what I enjoy anymore. I felt a bit like lost almost, because it felt like a minefield. I didn't know anybody really. I know our lecturers were sort of well connected, but then after COVID and a lot changed. And I think that's a thing in itself as well. Like when you leave university and coming into the world of work, like that's a thing in itself. Like that jump is actually massive. And sort of putting what you've learned at uni is one thing, but actually doing it in the industry is a totally other thing. It's great to have the degree, but by no means do you need that degree to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I will say that facts.
I think going back to what we were saying before, that's how you were saying, like, how did the business start? That's where I was, because I didn't really jump straight into or start looking for a job that my degree was related to. I sort of just was like pretending it wasn't there, like pretending I didn't need to, because I went like a year without, like, completely outside of anything that I learned at university. I just had a job, which is the job that I was telling you about that gradually went down. But I was just pretending that it wasn't a big thing. And on the side, I was just ever so slightly doing a bit of this and doing a bit of that. And then that sort of, actually, like, what if I didn't apply for a job?
Yeah.
That's how that came about. But yeah, you are right in that, like, sort of like limbo. It's like, here's your degree. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. That is,
this
I don't think that
this is the world.
Yeah, that is not talked about enough, because that is actually, it's a pretty scary time. Yeah, it's daunting, definitely. And I think if someone had told me that it is normal to feel a bit overwhelmed about all of this, I would have been very grateful for that.
Yeah.
So if that was one piece of advice I can give anyone coming out of uni, like that, it's natural to feel like that, I think. And it's only now I speak to people about that, then we're like, oh, we all actually felt like that. It just feels like you're the only one who feels like that at the time. So yeah, I sort of wanted to go into broadcast television, which is another arm of sort of, that sort of area and media of what I wanted to go into.
Sorry to interrupt. So how did you get that role? Because then you was like a minefield of how who did you? I mean, there's probably an episode in this in itself of how to get started in certain industries or who to speak to or where to go or whatever. But how did you get that first role, whether it be in the running role or when you decided to leave sort of the fast fashion stuff? How did you get that first role? Who did you speak to?
In
What's your
television?
approach? Yeah.
So I went on holiday with my mum, and because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was working for my dad at the time. My dad has his own business and owned it with my mum at the time. They both had their own thing. So I was very lucky that if I was not sure what I wanted to do, I could work there for the time being. And still do now sometimes because TV work can be up and down as well. And yeah, I was working there, and then my mum was going away, and she was like, why don't you just come away for a bit and give yourself some headspace? And I went away, and I was like, I know that I really want to do this, and I just don't know how. And I remember feeling really frustrated and quite down about it, really. And then every day, this was the thing. You can be stuck in a situation that you're potentially not happy with, but as long as you're looking and you're putting that energy out there and the feelers, it will eventually come. And I think patience is a virtue. And so when I was away, even though I felt like really like agitated by not knowing anyone or not knowing an in, I was just looking on the BBC careers pages or independent production companies careers pages. There's stuff like Talent Manager, Talent Bases, which sort of runners, researchers, APs, assistant producers in the industry can look on for work. And I was on the careers page for the BBC, and a role came up, and it was a runner on something called the Dengineers. And I was like, the Dengineers? I remember seeing the logo, and I was like, what on earth is that? And it was the best thing I ever could have done applying for that. I applied for it, and I thought, there's no way in a million years I'm going to get this. So what I did was I spoke to my partner's auntie, works at the University of Manchester, and again, it's all about like drawing on people, you know.
Yeah, sure.
But that has to come from you really wanting something, I think, as well, which is important. And yeah, I spoke to her, and she had a friend who worked in the career side of things, and so I thought, right, I can speak to her. And actually, thinking about it now, I could have potentially spoke to somebody at the University of Salford. I'd reached out to a few lecturers, but I think it was still in a bit of a rocky space after COVID as well. And well, it was basically, COVID was sort of coming out of second wave, but very much like everyone was wearing masks, everyone was testing every week on set, like it was still that vibe. And then I spoke to her, and I just said, listen, I don't know anybody in this industry. Is my CV even geared up in the right way for this? I wasn't sure. So I had a phone call with her whilst I was on holiday, and she sort of helped me with my CV. I redid it, sent it back to her. She sent it me and was like, yeah, I think this is much better. So I did that, and then I sent my application off to the BBC, and I think I was away for 10 days, and I got a phone call literally about 2-3 days after I applied saying we'd love to jump on a Zoom call with you early next week. But I was still on holiday at this point, so I was thinking, oh my God. I was like, I need to make the Wi-Fi was awful as well. I was like, all I've got is holiday clothes with me.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to look professional. Yeah. So anyway, I found a little office area where I was, and I did the Zoom call, and it was my first job, a runner on the Dengineers at the BBC at Media City.
Awesome.
And that was sort of my way in. I worked on the casting team for that, and it was quite lucky really, because a lot of jobs, especially at the Beeb, are sort of board interviews, and they've got a bit more of a structure and certain criteria that you have to hit, whereas this job, with it being a runner and in casting as well, it was more about your personality and sort of what you could, because it was essentially sort of not interviewing but chatting to children and their parents and families about their ideas of these big dens they wanted to create. And when I talk about it, it makes me smile, because it was such a good job. It was just a really, really, I don't like the word nice so much, but it was a really nice job.
Yeah.
So I just got to chat all day to I didn't just do this, but to children about their passions and about these massive dens they wanted to build in the garden. It was great.
Sounds awesome.
So and some of these things were huge that we built. So that was my first job in telly, and then that was it from there. Then I was like, right, I can.
Well, once you've got that sort of what's the word, like, you've
foot through the door.
Yeah, foot through the door, but you've also like proved that it can be done. Like when you were on holiday where you felt like you had no way in.
Yeah.
it sort of felt like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. But like once you found the first one, it's like, oh, okay, well I know that person, that person, that person. It doesn't feel so impossible
Yeah.
or far out to look at the next one. But you're just getting through that first one.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
we can do a full episode where we talk about, you know, the ways into things, and so it's the best ways to network or start something. But yeah, it's just getting over that first hump, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even though I did a course in media and performance, I don't think once I was actually told sort of how broadcast telly works in the sense that you're a runner, become a researcher, assistant producer, a producer, director, but that's only, this is what I mean about honing in as well, like that's only one arm of it. Like if you wanted to go into film, then you've got first AD, second AD, third AD, assistant directors. So that is totally different as well. They're different sort of unscripted, scripted.
Yeah, there's like a million different routes you can.
Factual entertainment, like you name it, there's loads.
Yeah.
And I think it felt like an absolute minefield, but just getting that first step in, then it shows like it's possible.
Yeah. And
then that felt easier because through that job, then I learned about I'm actually on the right path here. I can become a runner, then a researcher, and then I can become an AP. And then I started to accumulate that knowledge the more people I spoke to in the industry.
It probably helped it feel a bit more real as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Like because it was a proper job, a proper paid job, and right in the industry, like
Yeah, 100%. And I got from that, like, was able to, like, for example, I worked on Blue Peter. It was just a week, 2 weeks, can't remember, like, work experience. And that was great as well. It was the first time I'd been in, like, a studio set up for television. Again, totally different working on a studio show. And just the exposure to the industry, really. So that was, I think, 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago. I graduated 21. Yeah, about 2.5 years ago, almost coming up to 3 years ago now. And then sort of, rest was history, really. The television industry as a whole, which is what I work in now. I'm a researcher now, and I've had quite a few research credits now in my bag, which I've been really happy about. But the industry at the minute is and this isn't to be negative about it at all, but it is in a bit of it's going through a definite change, I think. And a lot of people are out of work. I think I read the other day 68% of people working in television at the moment are out of work and have had to sort of rethink their career patterns and paths, which is really sad, actually. But I think it's an industry that wasn't always, but has become very saturated.
Yeah.
There's been a hell of a lot of people constantly coming into the industry. And there is from this was one of my main things as well coming out of university. I was really petrified by not having a full-time employment job. I was really petrified about that. So when you work in telly, majority of the time it's short-term contracts, so you'll be paid full-time. It's still like a full-time job, but for example, you could be contracted to 3 months or even a month or even 2 weeks in some cases, depends on the job. Some jobs you can be contracted for the whole year, and depends if it's got like a rolling series, for example. And that really scared me because I didn't know anybody, my parents didn't know anybody, sort of, I'd never spoke to anybody really that had come from that sort of line of work. So my thing was, well, how easy is it to get work out? How hard is it to get work in this industry? But everybody I spoke to at the time, and this was only 2-3 years ago, everyone I spoke to that was like in the 40s, 50s was like, I've never been out of work, and if I have, it's only been for like a couple of weeks or a month at most. Like there's always been that workflow there, and it was sort of described to me as like, oh, plumber, never out of work, someone always needs a plumber.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And then I think with COVID, people's viewing habits changing as well. I think it's gradually
It's also
shifted.
been one of the biggest growing industries
Yeah.
in the last like 10 years. So that's created loads and loads of jobs. But like you said, sort of maybe it's gone a bit too far in terms of, not too far, but like it is a bit more saturated than it used to be.
Yeah, 100%. And sort of the only hope I can get from this now is that actually, I mean, it's very sad that a lot of people are out of work, but hopefully sort of with COVID and with people's viewing habits changing, is that everybody who has, you know, I don't necessarily, this isn't actually testament to anything really, because you can be still really good and out of work, but hopefully the people that will sort of gradually remain and will be really, really good people, and you know, really they'll be really good at what they do. I'm not sure whether I'm not sure whether that's entirely true, because I know a hell of a lot of good people out of work right now who are amazing at what they do. And my contract's about to come to an end, and it's just the nature of the industry. Yeah. And you sort of have to learn as well to save for a rainy day. When my partner watches this, he'll probably laugh, because I am in between a rock and a hard place with not being the best saver, but then I am a good saver, but then I'm like, oh, I could die tomorrow. Like, I'm in that place. But when you work in this industry, you could be a month, 3 weeks out of work, and that, you know, you have to like compensate for that. Really, you could be getting paid a really great weekly rate, but you've got to have contract breaks as well, in order to be paid better. So, because you're not full-time staff, and you don't get things like maternity pay, that sort of thing. So it's just all these things to consider. It doesn't mean it's not doable. We do this job because I do it because I love it. I really love it. And I've worked on a couple of really great things. So I wouldn't change it for the world, and I've met some really, really amazing people.
Okay, so that's obviously your TV side, but you mentioned that you also have been putting a lot of effort this year into sort of your freelance work and your freelance performance work. Do you want to just like give us a bit of a brief overview of that?
Yeah, so when I was working on the Dungeoneers, I was working alongside someone whose daughter is a freelance performer and singer, and she's just started her own business called Enchanted Events Manchester, and they're a princess performer company basically, and because I sing as well, I really wanted to get back into singing, and my confidence took a massive knock. I don't know what happened, but over the past couple of years prior to sort of leaving university, I don't know, my confidence just had a little bit of a knock, so I really wanted to start singing again. And there was next door to our house, there was a kids party going on, and there was an Elsa, and she was singing, and she had a really great voice, and I was like, oh my gosh. And my partner was there, and he was like, you could do that. And I was like, I think I could do that. And that, at the time, like now, I've worked for Enola, who owns Enchanted Events, and who I think we're going to have on, which it'll be great to chat to her as well. But yeah, I've been working for her for over 2 years now, which is crazy. So yeah, that was sort of my back into performing. So doing kids parties, large scale events, balls, that sort of thing. And, we've had some really great events that we've done at Enchanted Events. So I've been very lucky to be a part of that. I've really, really enjoyed that. And that sort of, whilst I've been working in TV, that has fulfilled my performing side of things as well. And as the years have gone on, that sort of confidence is just growing and is accumulating. And I really sort of want to start singing as well, potentially gigging. I've done a few tribute acts over the last year, which has been really enjoyable as well. And I want that to grow as well. So alongside doing sort of the kids' parties and events, I'd really like that side of it to grow as well, and just sing more and perform more. So I got an agent just over a year ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, about 2 years ago, a year ago. Got an agent, started applying for work again, and had some really great auditions up to date. With some big companies as well. So it feels like my foot is very much getting back into that door now, which is amazing.
It sounds like you got a good balance as well. Like obviously you got your TV stuff which you enjoy as well, most importantly, but then obviously this like more creative side that you can still sort of use as that little itch to get that like performance side in as well, but then you've got like a nice balance between. I mean, it's a good mix as well for like your weeks aren't always the same, and like you said, there's negatives and positives to the contract work, but it means that you're going from different jobs, you're not doing the same thing over and over again or on the same program over and over again. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but it sounds like you've struck a nice balance really, which is important.
Yeah, 100%. And like you say, there's sort of pros and cons of everything, isn't there? But if it doesn't feel like work, it doesn't feel as much.
Better.
There definitely is a balance, and I know we'll probably touch on this in another episode, but of like burning out, but when you are trying to explore your passions and sort of make your passions into work, if your Monday to Friday doesn't, well, I'm quite lucky because TV is a passion as well, so I do that in the week, but that is very much Monday to Friday. If you're on a shoot as well, it can be over. Sort of I sit here today like on day 7 of work, but it's what you've got. I think you have to be prepared to do that as well. Like if you want to pursue the things that you're enjoying and sort of do them alongside your Monday to Friday or whatever that the work structure looks like for you, it definitely is a balance of you do just have to do it, because otherwise you're never going to do it, because you don't get time to do it in the week.
Yeah.
So it's striking that balance between that and then also all the rest of it, seeing your mates, living life, enjoying the process.
Yeah.
That's been a big thing for me as well, enjoying the process.
Awesome.
I know you were saying before about sort of taking the time to look back.
Yeah.
And we don't really get much chance to do that.
Reflecting, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a big learning thing for me the past few years has been learning to enjoy the process. It's great having like a goal of where you want to be, but once you get there, you'll just want the next big thing on your list.
Exactly.
So learning to enjoy that process has definitely been a thing for me as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll obviously as the episodes go on and as the podcast grows, we'll hear more about the ins and outs and obviously stuff that you're working on like currently, and obviously as the podcast goes, maybe you'll be in one contract and to the next one. So it's going to be nice to sort of follow your sort of jobs and your sort of career as we go, really.
Yeah, because I'm very much in the thick of that. So yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah, awesome. Right, okay. Well, we feel like we know each other a little bit better. Hopefully our audience knows us a little bit better.
Yeah.
If you've made it this far, thank you very much. And thank you for listening. Obviously, we're really excited to get going. And over the next couple of months and episodes, we'll be having episodes that we'll talk about certain topics. We'll be having guests on, which is going to be really, really exciting. We'll learn more about their industries, listen to what they have to say, their stories like we've spoken about today. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. And the episodes are all going to be able to watch on YouTube and then stream on Spotify and Apple Music.
I think that's it.
That's it.
We're all good. There's our first episode.
Done. Smashed.
Out there in the open.